Hi everyone, and welcome to our session today on how to eliminate bad habits. So for those of you guys who are tuning into one of my webinars for the first time, hello, welcome. I'm Chloe from 3C's Philosophy, and my dream is to give you guys the tools and techniques to build yourself a happier, healthier, and more positive life, which fits quite nicely in with our topic today. So, what's my story? Well, I'm a wellness coach, and throughout my life, I've always had a bit of an addiction to eliminating habits. Well, trying to. I'm a chocoholic, so when I was about 17, I decided to stop eating chocolate for health reasons, and I didn't eat any chocolate for 4 years. Not a hot chocolate, not a chocolate biscuit, nothing. If it had the word chocolate in it, I wasn't allowed it. A few years ago, I also decided to give up caffeine, so for a year, I didn't have any tea or coffee. But I'm now eating chocolate again, and I'm drinking tea and coffee. So something I've always struggled with is making it last. For me, it always seems to be all or nothing. And the reason my habits haven't been sustainable was because I didn't make time to understand why I was craving the chocolate or what about the tea and coffee I wanted. And so I never really came up with a way to get over the habits. I just removed them completely, which doesn't really work. And the key to eliminating a bad habit is by replacing it with a different habit and creating an alternative method so that you still get the reward that the habit would have given me. But for me, I didn't go through that process and I just deprived myself of it. So since then, I've gone through a number of processes and I've learned the science behind habits, why we have habits, and how to eliminate them efficiently so that actually the bad habit is gone forever. So my aim for this session is to give you guys the tools to understand how your habits work and discover how to change them. Now, let's look at our learning objectives. By the end of the session, you will be able to understand your habits. I want you to be able to describe them, understand why you have your habits, think about what the triggers are, learn about what your rewards are. Why do you do those habits in the first place? You'll be able to take control of your day-to-day. So being able to introduce habits if you want to, remove bad habits if you want to, and plan your day-to-day. And then finally, you'll be able to discover how to change your everyday life for the better and for the long term. Now, this webinar is designed for those of you that want something to change and you're ready to make a difference in your lives. Those of you that believe you have the strength to make a change, and those of you that are committed to doing it. I can show you the way, but you have to be prepared to start walking it. Okay? So, if you believe that's you, let's get started. What is a habit? Habits are routine behaviors that are done on a regular basis. They are recurrent and often unconscious, so many times we don't even realize we're doing it. And habits are acquired through frequent repetition, so we don't realize we're doing it, and we're probably doing it over and over and over, which builds the habit. So what does a day in your life look like? Think about yourself now. Think about your day-to-day life. Is there anything that you do as part of your daily routine that sometimes you don't even realize you're doing? I mean, there's the obvious things like breathing, blinking, all of that sort of stuff, which are habits. There is a trigger that makes us blink. Blinking is the action and it gives us a reward, so possibly stops our eyes being dry and so on. So habits make up your everyday. Whatever it is, everywhere you look, our lives are full of habits. So how do they work? Now, all habits have a trigger that starts the process off. So the trigger is what happens that tells your brain to act. Once you've had the trigger, you then have the routine, and that's the habit that you usually do. So in the blinking example, the routine is the blink. And then finally, once you've done the routine, you get a reward, an initial result that satisfies you and gives you the positive outcome. So think of an example. Let's think of me biting my nails. So if I bite my nails, the trigger, let's say, could be being nervous. Let's say I'm nervous of something to do with work. So I decide to bite my nails. Now, The habit and the routine, the action that's happening, is the biting of my nails. So what's the reward? Why do I bite my nails? Well, I get from biting my nails a physical relief of the nerves. So it helps me release the nervous energy that's in my body. Now, your habits can be both positive and negative, but either way, they always have a positive intention. So no matter what you're doing as a habit, even if it's negative or a bad habit, it'll always have a positive intention. And that's something that we'll talk about a lot when we go through this session today. So let's think of some examples that people in their day-to-day usually change. Let's think about some of the most common ones. So a few that I've just come up with here for you. So spend less time on social media. Stop drinking coffee is always quite a common one. Stop snacking. Stop getting distracted by my phone. And there's a few others on there that you can take a look at. But it just gives you an idea of some of the things that we find people are trying to change on a day-to-day basis. And you might be looking at those thinking, no, there isn't really any of those that I want to change. Or on the other hand, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, that is definitely what I want to change and I want to eliminate that bad habit. So how do we eliminate a bad habit? Now, almost every change starts small. So whatever the change is, no matter how big it is, it'll always start with a small change. And that's basically how we make sure that it is achievable for ourselves. So rather than just thinking of the longer term, I need to do it all by this date, we're taking small steps. And that's the biggest thing that I want you guys to take away from this session today, is that we are looking in the future, but we're going to take every day as it comes. Now, when it comes to habits, scientific research has proven that habits can be created within 66 days. So that forms the habit in your mind and makes it become part of your subconscious. So something that you do without thinking. But 66 days is actually quite a long time. So let's think about the first stage. And that's really to do with understanding how your habit works. Because once you understand it, you can really start to analyze it and change it. Okay? So first of all, once you've identified the habit, you want to then think about what's the trigger for your habit. So what happens just before you do the habit? Then we also want to know, what's the reward? So whatever it is your bad habit, let's say it's snacking, by this point we want to understand what's the trigger. So what happens just before you snack, or in my case, what happens just before I bite my nails? And then what's the reward? So what do you get out of snacking? Why do you want to do it in the first place? So in order to change it, what we need to do is, where we would normally have our trigger causing our habit, our bad habit, which gives us the reward, we need to find something that replaces that bad habit. So something that we can still do with the same trigger. So when we receive the trigger, we do this new routine that gives us the same reward. So it's quite literally like picking up a piece of the puzzle and replacing it with a more positive routine or habit. This is something that I missed out on when I was giving up my chocolate and giving up my caffeine, was that, as I mentioned before, I was trying to completely eliminate the habit from my mindset, which actually didn't work because I was getting the trigger and I was depriving myself of the reward. Whereas now that I understand this, I know that I can get the trigger and I can get the reward, but I need to find something as a new routine rather than eating chocolate all the time or giving up caffeine that gives me the same reward so that I don't feel deprived, because that's why these sort of things are only usually short term, because instead of coming up with a longer term solution and giving ourselves a way to still get the buzz, still get the reward, we usually say, no, you can't have it. And when we tell ourselves we can't have something, 99% of the time we want it more. Okay. So, what's the trigger? What is it that you do just before the bad habit? What do you think triggers it off? So let's say it was comfort eating. So if your bad habit is snacking and comfort eating, because you're stressed, let's say, the trigger would be feeling stressed, because that's what happens just before you decide to have a snack. What's the routine? As we were talking about in that situation, it's what is the bad habit right now that you're doing? So what's the routine? So if you were looking at your snacking, your trigger would be getting stressed, and so your routine would then be to find snacks and comfort eat. And finally, what's the reward? Why do you do it? What do you get out of doing this bad habit? So in that situation I was talking about with snacking, what do you get out of snacking? What do you get out of comfort eating? Is it the rush of sugar that makes you feel better? Is it the feeling of feeling satisfied? Is it a distraction? And it's really important to get into the detail of this, because depending on exactly what the trigger is and depending on exactly what the reward is, the routine may be completely different. And when you're trying to replace your bad habit, you need to really understand what the reward is to make sure you still get it with your new routine and your new habit. So that brings us on to the next step. So thinking about your situation, is there anything you can do to change the routine? So is there anything you can introduce instead of snacking that will help you eliminate the stress and get the reward that you desire? Now what I'd like you to do is just spend a little time thinking about what the trigger is, what your bad habit was and your routine, and what your reward is. And just have a think about how you can replace that bad habit. How can you change the routine? Now, as you're thinking about this, it's important to find out what works best for you and stick to it. If you're the sort of person that likes having multiple things to focus on, so maybe you might pick a few small habits to do each day, or you might be the sort of person that wants to keep it simple and just focus on one habit at a time. Let's say you pick one habit for this month and you pick another habit for next month. Whatever it is, know yourself and do what works for you, because it needs to work for you if you're going to be motivated to do it. Now we're going to make it happen. So now that you've got an idea of the habit you want to change, I'm going to take you through an exercise as to how to plan it. So the first thing in terms of making it happen, so making this real, is that we need to really understand the new habit. So the trigger for my habit is, just make a note now of the trigger for your habit. Now I want you to think about what you'll do differently as part of your new routine. So what is your new habit? What will your reward be? So what's the reward that you got previously when you did your bad habit? And making sure that that's the same as the reward you're getting now. And finally, at the end of the day, I will feel. Now, this is really important because you need to be able to imagine how you feel when you've achieved it. What's that great feeling that you feel the first day that you've done your new habit? Because that's what you're going to focus on, and that will motivate you through your 66 days. So let's just think of the first day. At the end of that day, when you've done your new habit and it's worked and you've got that reward, how do you feel? Now, the next step is preparing yourself. So what you need to do is have a think about your new habit and your new situation, because it's going to challenge you. So we need to just prepare you for what challenges you may face. The next thing to think about is how you will face this challenge. And finally, make sure you tell your friends and family about your habit goals and call on them in times of need. So the next area to make a note of here is, when I need support, I will talk to. Now, this is key for when you first start, because you want your friends and family to be on board and not tempt you. You know, if you're trying to cut down on alcohol and you want your friends to know, because you don't want them coming around for dinner and bringing an extra bottle of wine for you and you can't drink it. So when you need support, who will you talk to? So if you do face one of these challenges, Who can you give a call to? Who can you speak to? And make a note of it in there so that when you're in those times of need, it's written there. You haven't got to think about it. You've just got to get in touch with them. Okay, and the third and final step is understanding your ultimate goal. So we're looking long term here. Now we know it takes approximately 66 days to create a habit. So what will the date be when you've created the habit? When it's now long term and ingrained in your mind. So in order to do that, I want you to write down the date in 66 days. This is the date you're working towards. Now, in order to motivate you to work towards that, we're going to think ahead and we're going to think about how you'll be feeling in 66 days. And I want you to write it down because that's going to tell you how you're going to feel when you've successfully created your habit. What's the feeling you're craving for? Will it be achievement? Will it be satisfaction? Will it be fulfillment? Maybe pride? Whatever it is, write it down because that again is your goal. That's your ultimate goal and that's going to motivate you. So, what I'd like you to do now is I want you to think back to the habit you thought about in the first exercise, the habit that you want to change. And I want you to complete these 3 steps. So I want you to spend time understanding your new habit. I want you to spend time preparing yourself. And I want you to spend time understanding your ultimate goal. Feel free to pause this webinar, rewind back to the 3 steps that we talked about, and make a note of how you're going to eliminate your bad habit. Once you've planned how you're going to change your habit and eliminate your bad habit, it's important to reflect on your progress. So, each week, give yourself some time to reflect on your progress and write it down. How do you feel? What do you do well? What do you feel you can improve on? What will you do differently next week? Now, it's important to do this on a weekly basis because 66 days is just over 9 weeks. So we'd normally do this for 10 weeks there to really cover the full period. So just do a few bullet points at the end of each week as to how you felt, what you did well, what you can improve on, and what you're going to do differently next week. And also, you'll see the days at the bottom there. If you just tick them off, the days that you did your new habit, that will also give you an idea of how you're getting on each week. Very visual exercise and very high level. Now, it's important to note that it doesn't have to be every day. So just because you don't tick every day doesn't mean you did anything wrong. You know, your habit might be to exercise 3 times a week. So if that was your new habit, your aim will be to tick off 3 of those days. You won't need to tick off all 7. Okay, so that gives you an idea of how to reflect on your habits. And well, that brings us to the end of the session. I really hope you've all found this session useful and beneficial in starting you on your wellbeing journey. And just remember, habits make up your everyday. And you do have the ability to change your habits. You do have the ability to create new habits. And you have the ability to create the life that you deserve. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope that you've enjoyed it as much as I have.